resonance is a way of being in the world, or a way of relating to the world. I had written this book on speed, right, and acceleration, and I said I want to understand this as the first part of a sociology of the good life. So I ask myself, when is life good and when is it bad, so to speak? And I realized that it depends on our relationship to the world, not just to other people, but also to things we interact with, and even with ourselves, and with the encompassing totality like nature or world or life. And very often we are in an alienated mode, so we are short on time, for example, right, in the hamster wheel, pressed for time, or in a mode of aggression against almost everyone, even against ourselves, right, when we try to optimize and so on. But sometimes we get in a different mode of relating to the world, and and I realized that when life is good, so to speak, right, then it's characterized by four elements. So resonance is a mode of being in the world, a mode of relationship. And the first element of resonance is if something touches us, something speaks to us, right? For example, I'm running all day and all of a sudden I hear something like music, for example, or I see a wonderful painting, or I read a great idea. So the first element is something touches me, it's affection. And then I answer it, I react to it, right? And this is the second element. I call it self-efficacy, right? Moving outward, or emotion, right? So it's a double. So resonance is a mode of listening. Something is calling me, and then answering. I do something with it, right? I answer. And in this mode, I change. That's the third element, transformation, right? We don't stay the same. And the fourth element of resonance is that you cannot control it. You cannot buy it. You cannot bring it about instrumentally. So these moments of resonance very often are unexpected, or at least we cannot fabricate them, and we don't know where they will lead us to. The result of resonance is kind of unknown. Oui, je crois que la démocratie est vraiment en crise. And it's on the one hand, it's really a time crisis, because democracy is a time-consuming business, so to speak, right? It's not just about taking a decision. Of course, we can say yes or no very quickly, right? But democracy is the idea that the different voices in a society, right, articulate themselves, and then they enter into a dialogue, into a process of deliberation, and that's a very time-consuming process. And in our late modern society, there is never enough time for this. The economy is very fast, the markets need fast reactions, but also the media want fast reactions, right? And even when you move towards times of war, right, then you have to act very quickly. So it's not very good, not good times for democracy. And the other thing is that we live in this acceleration society, which is characterized by a mode of dynamic stabilization. Every year we have to achieve economic growth, we have to accelerate, and we have to come up with new innovations. And this forces us into a mode of aggression. The modern society is aggressive towards nature. It's aggressive on the social level. You can really see our democratic culture is almost in decay, right? People yell at each other in parliament, in talk shows, on the streets, and finally in war, right? And we are even in aggression against ourselves, which you see from the high burnout rates. People permanently try to optimize themselves until they break. So what we need, particularly in the political sphere, is a different form. I call it, of course, a mode of resonance. And the basic process of resonance is listening and answering. And in my view, when I say democracy needs religion, I mean religion in a very specific sense, not in a certain set of dogmas or a hierarchy or certain authorities. But that we need to get into this mode where we try to listen to something out there which is important, that something out there speaks to us, and we want to be touched by this other, and we are ready to be transformed. And this is how I think democracy should work, right? We know there are other citizens, right, in our society, and they have a different opinion, a different voice, different beliefs, different forms of living, of loving, and so on, right? And democracy means I need to be ready to listen to them and to be open to be touched and transformed, right? And this, it's a set of practices and ideas. And religion, for example, Christianity, but not just Christianity, does have a set of ideas, right? That God is calling us. He has given us the breath of life. He has called us by our name, for example, our religious ideas, right? This puts us in this mode of listening and answering. And there are spaces like when you enter a church, whether you believe anything or not, doesn't matter. The church is a quiet place. It's a huge space normally. It's a dark place. And there you are not in this mode of aggression. There's nothing to do, nothing to buy, nothing to solve. So you get into this mode of listening and answering, right? So I think religion can provide us with spaces like temples, synagogues, churches, with certain times like Sunday, for example, and with certain ideas where we become the citizens who are ready to listen to others and let themselves be touched, respond, and be transformed. So when I say democracy needs religion, I mean democracy needs this attitude. I call it callability, right? Being ready to be touched and transformed. On the one hand, I was interested in heavy metal because when I was young, particularly when I was a teenager, it was really that age, right? I remember it was in the year 1980 when Black Sabbath released Heaven and Hell and Iron Maiden, their first album, right? It really was for me like a breath of life, you could say, right? I really thought, it felt like the navel cord that connects us to the mother normally, right? But to life, there was power coming through it, right? And so this music has always been important for me, right to this day, right? And then I realized, well, I'm not the only one, right? There are just in Germany, for example, about 10 million people who have similar experiences. So I got really interested, and I wondered, why is it that this kind of music, which a lot of people think is just noise, right? It can become so meaningful in people's lives. There was a big study actually done, interviews with 6,000 heavy metal fans, and 40% of them said that at one point or another, heavy metal has saved my life, right? Which sounds very strange, right? How can this noise save a life, right? And so I tried to really look into it, and of course, I would say the music is very intense, as you said, right? Which means it's really like an embrace, right? And people want to be embraced, the touch of life, right? So if someone embraces you who you like, then this is really giving you power, right? But if someone embraces you who you don't like, you feel it's like an act of aggression. And this is exactly how people react to this music, right? Some feel like in a loving embrace, while others feel, oh my God, turn off that noise, right? So I think it's like a strong touch. And then I looked deeper into it and thought, well, what happens? Of course, I think heavy metal it's not a very political form of music, right? It doesn't have a clear message. And most of the cases, it doesn't give you a story, right? It just operates with images. And these images are very interesting. They're actually very much related to religion, right? Because it's all about heaven and hell, right? Like the Black Sabbath album. It's really full of angels and devils, demons and monsters, but also saviors and so on, right? So it's salvation and damnation. It's amazing in the covers, in the lyrics, in the imagery, right? And very often it's rather the dark side, right? But I think the point of heavy metal is that it gives you a strong, reassuring power. As a sociologue, I would almost say a kind of ontological security. You can rely on the rhythm and on the next beat, right? And then it plays also on our darkest fears. You know what I call the existential question. What is at the bottom of my life, right? Is it salvation or damnation? Is it heaven or hell? Is it eternity or just eternal darkness or so on? So heavy metal operates on a musical side and on the side of images with kind of allowing us to face the existential questions without giving a dogmatic answer. It doesn't give an answer at all, right? And that's the difference to religion, right? It doesn't tell you, oh, everything is okay, you're already saved. But it allows you to face your fears, right? And I would say, a bit different from punk music, heavy metal always has this element of, I would call it transcendence, right? This is how I interpret the guitar solo, right? It opens a window of transcendence, a hope of overcoming the darkness and the fear in our lives. So I think something very essential is going on in this kind of music for many people in our culture. On the one hand, as I said, I like Iron Maiden very much, right? I think I have all of their albums, and in the book, I tell a story my own story, but I think it's true for many people, right? That so to speak, Iron Maiden was accompanying me all my life, so I can remember what happened when the first album came out and the Number of the Beast and so on. So this made it quite likely that I would choose an Iron Maiden song. But in Germany, the book is called differently, right? In the German title is, in Germany, the book has also an English title. It's called Where Monsters Roar and Angels Sing. I was really, because for me that's the essence of heavy metal, right? That you always have the dark and the light together. But the English the French publisher thought that title doesn't really work very well in France, right? So I suggested No Fear of the Dark, and of course it's a play of words because the Maiden album is called Fear of the Dark. And as I just said, I think the point of heavy metal is that it allows you to face your fears without fear, so to speak, right? So I thought No Fear of the Dark is a great title for that book.